Have you ever had that moment when your entire world crumbles in a single heartbeat? That split second when everything you thought was real suddenly reveals itself as an illusion? Mine came on Christmas morning, in what should have been the most joyful time of the year. Instead, I woke up to an empty house, a note on the kitchen counter, and the haunting silence that would forever change my life. But this isn't just a story of loss. It's a story of rising from the ashes, of finding strength in the darkest moments, and of discovering that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as our deepest wounds. I'm Emily Cooper, and this is my story of how losing everything led me to find myself. Let me take you back to that morning that changed everything. The crisp Seattle air seeped through the windows of our Queen Anne craftsman home, and the soft glow of Christmas lights still twinkled outside, casting shadows on the fresh snow that had fallen overnight. I remember stretching my arm across the bed, expecting to find Jack's warm presence beside me. Instead, my hand met cold, empty sheets. The silence in the house was deafening, different from the usual peaceful morning quiet. The soft morning light filtered through our bedroom window, casting a warm glow on the hardwood floors. I called out Jack's name, thinking he might be downstairs making his signature Christmas morning coffee, a tradition we'd kept since our first Christmas together 5 years ago. No response. Just the hollow echo of my voice bouncing off the walls of our craftsman home. My bare feet touched the cold floor as I made my way downstairs, the house feeling unusually still. The Christmas tree we decorated together just weeks ago stood in the corner of our living room, presents still arranged perfectly beneath it, or at least some of them. I noticed immediately that the gifts I'd carefully wrapped for Jack were the only ones there. His presents to me were missing. The kitchen counter, usually cluttered with Jack's morning coffee setup, was pristine. Too pristine. And there, propped against the coffee maker, was a white envelope with my name written, in his familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, the paper crinkling loudly in the silent house. Emily, I can't do this anymore. I've tried, but we're too different. You're too focused on your career, and I need someone who puts our relationship first. I've moved out. I'll have my lawyer contact you. Don't try to reach me. Jack. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. 5 years of marriage, reduced to a few cruel sentences. I sank to the kitchen floor, still in my Christmas pajamas, the cold tile seeping through the fabric. Outside, I could hear children's excited squeals as they discovered their Christmas presents, families beginning their celebrations. Inside our home, my home now, I supposed, the silence was deafening. I don't know how long I sat there, the letter crumpled in my hand, before my phone buzzed. It was Sophie, my best friend, sending her usual Christmas morning text. Mary. Christmas? Coffee at Luna later? I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. How could I tell her? How could I put this nightmare into words? Instead of texting back, I hit the call button. Sophie answered on the first ring, her voice bright with holiday cheer. Merry Christ! She stopped mid-sentence, probably hearing my shaky breathing. Emily? What's wrong? He's gone, I managed to whisper. Jack's gone. He left a note. He left. 20 minutes later, Sophie burst through my front door, still in her yoga pants and winter coat, carrying 2 cups of coffee. From Cafe Luna. She took one look at me, still sitting on the kitchen floor, and set the coffee aside. Without a word, she sat down next to me and pulled me into a tight hug. That's when the dam broke. I sobbed into her shoulder, the reality of the situation finally hitting me full force. What am I going to do? I choked out between sobs. It's Christmas, Sophie. Christmas. Who leaves on Christmas? Sophie pulled back, her hands firm on my shoulders. A coward, that's who, she said, her voice fierce with loyalty. A complete coward who couldn't even face you in person. As the day wore on, Sophie helped me move from the kitchen floor to the couch. She made calls to my family, explaining why I wouldn't be at Christmas dinner. She ordered Chinese food, the only place open on Christmas Day, and sat with me as I picked at my lo mein, my appetite non-existent. That evening, as Sophie was getting ready to leave, she turned to me with determination in her eyes. "Emily, listen to me. This feels like the end of the world right now, but it's not. You're the strongest person I know. You're going to get through this, and you're going to come out stronger. And I'll be here every step of the way." I managed a weak smile, but inside, I couldn't feel the truth of her words. All I could feel was the crushing weight of betrayal, the humiliation of being abandoned on Christmas Day, and the terrifying uncertainty of what would come next. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep in the too-empty house, I scrolled through our photos on my phone. Jack and me at our wedding, both beaming. Us hiking in the Olympics last summer. Our trip to Pike Place Market just last month, where he'd bought me those handmade earrings I'd admired. Had he been planning this even then? How long had he been pretending? The questions swirled in my mind, keeping sleep at bay. The next few days passed in a blur. Sophie practically moved in, working remotely from my living room, making sure I ate and showered. Maria from work covered my projects, telling our boss I had a family emergency. I existed in a fog of disbelief and pain, barely registering the transition from Christmas to New Year's. It was Grace Chen, my mentor from the Local Business Women's Network, who finally snapped me out of it. She showed up at my door 3 days into the new year, dressed impeccably as always, her presence commanding even on my front porch. "Enough," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Get dressed, we're going to get coffee, and we're going to make a plan." I started to protest, but the look in her eyes stopped me. 10 minutes later, we were sitting at a corner table in Cafe Luna, steaming lattes between us. Grace pulled out a leather notebook and pen. "First things first," she said, "all business. Have you contacted a lawyer?" I shook my head, feeling the familiar tightness in my throat. I've been waiting for his lawyer to contact me, like the note said." Grace's pen hit the table with a sharp tap. "Emily Cooper, listen to me carefully. You are not going to sit around waiting for that man to dictate the terms of your life. Not anymore. I'm calling Catherine Sullivan. She's the best divorce attorney in Seattle, and she owes me a favor." For the first time since Christmas morning, I felt a tiny spark of something other than despair. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was determination, but it was something. That afternoon, I met with Catherine in her downtown office. She listened to my story, her expression growing increasingly stern. "He left on Christmas Day with no warning, taking his possessions while you were asleep?" she clarified, making notes. "And the house is in both your names?" I nodded, and a small, fierce smile crossed her face. "Well, Mrs. Wilson, or should I say Ms. Cooper, I think we have a very strong case here." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. Sophie helped me redecorate, painting over the colors Jack had chosen, filling the spaces he'd left empty with pieces that reflected me. Grace introduced me to her network of successful businesswomen, each with their own story of resilience and reinvention. At work, I channeled my pain into productivity. The project I'd been leading, the one Jack had claimed took too much of, my attention landed our biggest client yet. Bill Peterson, our CEO, called me into his office to personally congratulate me. "Emily," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I know you've been going through some personal challenges, but the way you've handled yourself, the dedication you've shown, well, we've been discussing creating a new position. Director of Client Strategy. I think you'd be perfect for it." I blinked, stunned. Are you offering me a promotion?" He nodded, sliding a folder across his desk. "Take the weekend to think about it. this would be a significant step up. That night, I sat in Cary Park, looking out over the Seattle skyline. 6 weeks had passed since that Christmas morning. 6 weeks since I thought my world had ended. Now, sitting here with a promotion offer in my bag and a new sense of purpose in my heart, I realized Sophie had been right. This hadn't been the end of my world. It had been the beginning of a new one. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "Dinner tomorrow? Bring the contract. We'll review it together." I smiled, typing back a quick, "Yes." I had lost a husband, but I had gained an army of supporters, women who lifted me up instead of trying to dim my light. The sun was setting over Puget Sound, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold. I took a deep breath of the crisp winter air, feeling truly awake for the first time in weeks. Jack had been wrong. Focusing on my career wasn't a flaw. It was a strength. And now, without him holding me back, I was finally free to soar. 6 months passed since that fateful Christmas morning, and spring painted Seattle in vibrant shades of pink and purple. The cherry blossoms along my street danced in the gentle breeze, their petals creating a delicate carpet on the sidewalk. I stood at my kitchen window, sipping my morning coffee, watching the neighborhood come alive.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The emptiness that had once consumed this house had slowly transformed into something else, a sense of possibility. My phone lit up with a notification. It was an email from Catherine, my attorney, with updates about the divorce proceedings. I took a deep breath before opening it. The past months had been a roller coaster of legal negotiations, asset divisions, and uncovering truths I wasn't sure I was ready to face. "The papers from Jack's lawyer finally arrived," Catherine wrote. "You might want to come to the office to discuss this in person." I glanced at my watch. I had a meeting with Bill about our new client strategy in an hour. As if reading my mind, a text from Grace popped up. "Lunch at Maximilian's? I heard you have some documents to review." A small smile tugged at my lips. Grace's uncanny ability to know exactly when I needed support had become one of the constants in my new life. I quickly replied with a yes, then headed upstairs to get ready for the day. The morning light streamed through my bedroom window, illuminating the space I'd recently redecorated. Gone were the muted grays Jack had insisted on, replaced by soft blues and creamy whites. The wall that once held our wedding photo now displayed a collection of black and white photographs I'd taken during my weekend photography classes, another new addition to my life. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown Seattle office, casting long shadows across my newly organized desk. A fresh cup of coffee steamed beside my laptop, its aroma mingling with the scent of the lilies Sophie had brought to brighten up my workspace. As Director of Client Strategy, I'd earned this corner office with its stunning view of Puget Sound. But today, my attention was focused on something else entirely. My computer screen displayed an email that made my heart race. Jack's company, where we'd first met 7 years ago, was seeking to partner with us on a major project. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I contemplated my response. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same man who claimed my career ambitions had ruined our marriage might now have to work with me as his superior. A gentle knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Maria stepped in, her arms full of client portfolios. Her expression shifted from professional to concerned as she read my face. "Everything okay, Em? You look like you've seen a ghost." I swiveled my monitor toward her, watching as her eyes widened in recognition. "Well," she said, placing the portfolios on my desk, "this is certainly interesting." She perched on the edge of my desk, something she'd started doing during our late-night strategy sessions. "What are you thinking?" The question hung in the air as I stood up, walking to the window. Below, the city bustled with morning energy, people rushing to meetings, tourists heading toward Pike Place Market, baristas setting up sidewalk chairs. My reflection in the glass looked different from the woman I'd been a year ago, stronger, more confident, with a determination in my eyes that had replaced the old uncertainty. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, turning back to Maria, "that this is exactly the kind of challenge I need to prove to myself that I've truly moved on." I paused, a small smile playing on my lips. Plus, their proposal actually has merit. They've developed some interesting technologies that could complement our new platform. Maria nodded, but her expression remained concerned. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Working with Jack's team, seeing him in meetings?" I walked back to my desk, picking up the framed quote Grace had given me when I accepted the director position. "Success is the best revenge." The frame caught the sunlight, sending prisms dancing across my desk. "I'm not just ready," I replied. "I'm looking forward to it." That afternoon, I scheduled a meeting with Bill to discuss the potential partnership. As I rode the elevator to the executive floor, I thought about how different these interactions felt now. Gone was the nervous junior executive, always second-guessing herself. In her place stood a woman who had learned to trust her instincts and own her expertise. Bill's office, with its panoramic view of the Olympic Mountains, had once intimidated me. Now it felt like a familiar arena where I'd fought and won many battles. He looked up from his computer as I entered, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Emily," he greeted me warmly. "Maria mentioned you wanted to discuss something important." His eyes twinkled with curiosity. He'd come to trust my instincts for profitable opportunities. I pulled up the proposal on my tablet, but before I could begin my presentation, Bill held up his hand. "Before we dive in, I want you to know, I'm aware of whose company this is. If you're not comfortable with this, we can find other partnerships." The concern in his voice touched me, but I shook my head. "Actually, that's partly why I wanted to discuss this with you personally. I think it's important that you know I can handle this professionally. More than that, I believe this partnership could be incredibly valuable for us." For the next hour, I walked him through my analysis of the potential collaboration, pointing out synergies and growth opportunities. As I spoke, I could see Bill's expression shift from concern to genuine interest. "Impressive work, Emily," he said when I finished. "But tell me honestly, how will you handle working directly with Jack? There will be meetings, presentations." I straightened in my chair, meeting his gaze directly. A year ago, I wouldn't have been ready for this. But now, I see it as an opportunity to demonstrate just how far I've come. "Besides," I added with a slight smile, "I think it's important to show that women can maintain professionalism even in challenging personal situations." Bill leaned back in his chair, studying me for a moment before breaking into a broad grin. "You know, when I promoted you to director, some people questioned whether you were ready. They said you were too young, too inexperienced." He paused, shaking his head. "But this right here, this is exactly why I knew you were the right choice. Set up the initial meetings. I trust your judgment." As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Yoga class tonight? You look like you could use some zen." I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. Sophie had an uncanny ability to sense when I needed to decompress. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. By the time I left the office, the sun was setting, painting the Seattle skyline in hues of orange and pink. The walk to Sophie's studio gave me time to process the day's events. The converted warehouse that housed Soulflow Yoga still bore traces of its industrial past. Exposed brick walls and high ceilings now softened by hanging plants and warm lighting. Sophie greeted me with a hug, her usual energetic presence, somehow both calming and invigorating. "Spill," she commanded as we rolled out our mats in her private studio space. "Your text responses were way too short today. Something's up." As we moved through our warm-up poses, I told her about the proposal and my meeting with Bill. Sophie listened quietly, which was unusual for her. It wasn't until we were in Shavasana that she spoke. "You know what I think?" she said softly. "I think the universe has a weird sense of humor, but I also think it never gives us challenges we're not ready for." Later that evening, I sat on my deck, watching the last traces of sunset fade from the sky. The garden I'd planted in spring was thriving, small solar lights twinkling among the flowers like earthbound stars. This space, like so much of my life, had been transformed from a place of shared memories into something entirely my own. My phone lit up with a message from Grace. "Heard about the potential partnership. Dinner tomorrow? We should discuss strategy." I smiled, appreciating how my support system had evolved into a powerful network of women who had my back. As I typed my response, another message came through, this one from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I read it. "Emily, I heard about the potential collaboration. Can we meet to discuss it privately? Jack." I stared at the message, feeling an unexpected calm settle over me. A year ago, this message would have sent me into an emotional tailspin. Now, it was just another business matter to handle professionally. Opening my laptop, I composed a careful response. "Any discussions about the potential partnership should go through proper channels. I'll have my assistant set up a meeting with both teams next week. Professional, detached, perfect." Inside, I moved through my evening routine with a sense of purpose. The house that had once felt too empty now felt like a sanctuary. In the study that had once been Jack's domain, I had created my own workspace, walls lined with books on business strategy and leadership, a vision board filled with my goals and dreams. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me looked strong, confident, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. I thought about how far I'd come from that Christmas morning, how much I'd grown and changed. My phone buzzed one last time, Grace confirming. "Dinner for tomorrow." As I set my alarm for the morning, I felt a surge of gratitude for the women who had helped me rebuild my life, who had shown me that ending of one chapter could lead to the beginning of something even better. I fell asleep that night not with anxiety about facing Jack, but with excitement about the opportunity to show him, and more importantly, myself, just how much I had flourished without him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I was ready for them. More than ready, I was eager to prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's becoming someone stronger than you ever thought possible. The boardroom buzzed with nervous energy as I arranged my presentation materials on the sleek mahogany table. Early morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the Seattle skyline beyond. I smoothed down my navy silk blazer, a recent purchase that Grace had insisted would project exactly the right mix of authority and sophistication. The presentation deck was ready on my laptop, copies of the proposal neatly stacked beside me. Everything was perfect, except for the knot of anticipation in my stomach. Behind me, Maria quietly arranged coffee and pastries from Essential Bakery, our standard meeting fare. The familiar scent of fresh coffee and croissants helped ground me in the moment. I caught her eye, and she gave me a subtle thumbs up, our private signal that everything was in place. The elevator chimed, and voices drifted down the hallway. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I watched as Bill led the delegation from Jack's company toward us. My heart skipped a beat as I spotted Jack among them, looking exactly as he had the last time I'd seen him, yet somehow like a stranger. His eyes met mine for a brief moment before quickly looking away. "Emily," Bill's voice boomed as he entered the room. "Let me introduce the team from Tech Vision Solutions." He proceeded to name each member, their CFO, head of development, and various other executives. Jack stood silently at the back of the group, his role conspicuously unannounced. I shook hands with each person, maintaining my professional smile. When I reached Jack, our handshake was brief and formal. "Ms. Cooper," he said quietly, using my maiden name. "You're looking well." "Thank you, Mr. Wilson," I replied, my voice steady. "Please, everyone, take your seats. We have a lot to cover this morning." As the group settled around the table, I took my position at the head of the room. This was my territory now, my moment to shine. I clicked to the first slide of my presentation, took a deep breath, and began. As you can see from the market analysis, I gestured to the screen behind me. Our combined technologies could revolutionize how we approach client engagement. My voice carried confidently across the boardroom as I walked through the potential synergies between our companies. The faces around the table showed increasing interest, with several executives leaning forward in their chairs. Jack sat near the middle of the table, his expression carefully neutral as he took notes. I could read the tension in his shoulders, the way he gripped his pen too tightly. Once, I would have worried about his comfort, adjusted my presentation to make him feel more at ease. Now, I simply continued with my carefully crafted strategy outline. The real opportunity lies in combining TechVision's back-end infrastructure with our client-facing solutions, I explained, clicking to the next slide. Our preliminary projections suggest a potential 30% increase in market share within the first year alone. TechVision's CFO, Linda Marshall, raised her hand. "These numbers are impressive, Ms. Cooper. But what about the integration? Challenges? We've had issues with similar partnerships in the past." I smiled, having anticipated this question. "Excellent point, Ms. Marshall. If you'll turn to page 12 of your packets," I launched into a detailed explanation of our implementation strategy, feeling completely in my element. This was what I was good at: solving complex problems, seeing the bigger picture, creating value. From the corner of my eye, I caught Jack shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He had always underestimated my ability to handle high-stakes presentations like this. Now here I was, commanding the attention of a room full of executives, including him. As I wrapped up the formal presentation, Bill opened the floor for questions. The discussion that followed was lively and engaged, with both teams clearly excited about the possibilities. I fielded each query with confidence, drawing on my deep understanding of both the technology and the market. "One last question," Jack suddenly spoke up, his voice carrying a slight edge. "How do you plan to handle the personal dynamics involved in this partnership, given our history?" The room fell silent. I could feel all eyes on me, waiting to see how I would handle this clearly inappropriate question. Bill started to intervene, but I held up my hand, meeting Jack's gaze directly. "Mr. Wilson," I replied, my voice cool and professional, "I assure you that any previous personal relationships will have no bearing on this partnership. My team and I are committed to maintaining the highest level of professionalism. We evaluate all opportunities based on their merit alone, and this one has considerable potential for both companies." Linda Marshall nodded approvingly, while several other executives shot disapproving looks in Jack's direction. His attempt to unsettle me had backfired spectacularly. As the meeting wrapped up, Bill invited everyone to join us for lunch at the Metropolitan Grill. I gathered my materials, accepting compliments and fielding follow-up questions from various TechVision executives. Jack lingered behind, obviously wanting to speak with me, but Maria smoothly intercepted him, directing him toward the elevator with the others. In the private bathroom on our floor, I took a moment to collect myself. The woman in the mirror looked composed, professional, successful. Everything Jack had claimed I could never be while married to him. I reapplied my lipstick, adjusted my blazer, and headed to join the others for lunch. The Metropolitan Grill was buzzing with its usual lunchtime energy. Our group was seated in a private dining room, the dark wood paneling and crisp white tablecloths, creating an atmosphere of understated luxury. I found myself seated between Linda Marshall and TechVision's head of development, with Jack mercifully placed at the opposite end of the table. "I have to say, Ms. Cooper," Linda leaned in as we studied our menus. "I'm incredibly impressed with your handling of today's presentation. We've been looking for the right partnership for months, but no one has presented such a comprehensive and well-thought-out proposal." I smiled, genuinely pleased by her words. "Thank you, Ms. Marshall. I believe our companies have a real opportunity to create something innovative together." As lunch progressed, the conversation flowed easily between technical discussions and lighter topics. I found myself enjoying the dynamic, particularly with Linda, who shared my passion for data-driven decision-making. When she mentioned her involvement with a women's leadership initiative, I saw an opportunity to strengthen our connection. "You should meet my mentor, Grace Chen," I suggested. "She runs a similar program here in Seattle. In fact, she's hosting a networking event next month that might interest you." Jack's voice carried down the table. "Still letting other people fight your battles, Emily?" The comment was quiet enough that only those nearest to us could hear it, but Linda's expression darkened. Before either of us could respond, Bill smoothly changed the subject, directing everyone's attention to the upcoming industry conference in San Francisco. After lunch, as the group dispersed, Linda pulled me aside. "Listen, I know it's not my place, but I want you to know that Jack's behavior today was noticed. Rest assured, it will be addressed." I thanked her, maintaining my professional demeanor, but inside I felt a surge of validation. Jack's attempts to undermine me had only served to strengthen my position with key decision-makers. Back at the office, I found a bouquet of yellow roses on my desk, Sophie's trademark encouragement. The card read, "Heard you crushed it today. Celebration drinks at Canlis? No excuses." I smiled, remembering how she'd done the same thing after my first major presentation as a junior executive. Maria appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand. The Tech Vision team sent over their preliminary feedback. "Want to hear it now, or should I save it for tomorrow?" "Now, please," I said, settling into my chair. "Let's see where we stand." As Maria read through the overwhelmingly positive responses, I felt a sense of profound satisfaction, not just because of the successful presentation, but because of how far I'd come. The woman who had once sought Jack's approval for every decision was gone, replaced by someone who trusted her own judgment and abilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "Heard about your triumph from Bill. Dinner tonight? We should discuss your next moves." I smiled, thinking about how different my support system looked now. Strong, successful women who lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across my office, I worked on follow-up emails and meeting summaries. The city lights began to twinkle on in the gathering dusk, creating a glittering backdrop to my reflection in the window. I thought about Jack's attempts to rattle me, about how they had failed spectacularly. A year ago, his words would have devastated me, sent me spiraling into self-doubt. Now they seemed petty and small, the last gasps of someone who couldn't, except that I had outgrown his shadow. The woman he had left on Christmas morning no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, more capable, and infinitely more confident. My computer chimed with a new email. Linda Marshall requesting a one-on-one meeting to discuss the partnership in more detail. As I typed my response, I felt a surge of excitement about the future. This partnership would be transformative for both companies, but more importantly, it represented something personal for me. The final proof that ending my marriage hadn't been the end of my story, but rather the beginning of a much better one. I gathered my things, ready to meet Grace for dinner. The Seattle night spread out before me, full of possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove myself. But tonight, I would celebrate this victory, not because I had shown Jack what he had lost, but because I had shown myself what I could achieve. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I thought about how life had a way of coming full circle. The man who had once claimed I was too focused on my career was now watching that same career soar past his own. But the real victory wasn't in proving him wrong. It was in proving myself right. I had always been capable of greatness. I had just needed the freedom to achieve it on my own terms. The cool evening air hit my face as I stepped out onto the Seattle sidewalk. Above me, the sky was turning that peculiar shade of purple that only seems to exist in city twilight. I took a deep breath, feeling truly, completely alive. This was my moment, my time, my life, and I was finally, fully ready to embrace it. All. The lights of downtown Seattle blurred through the rain-streaked windows of Canlis Restaurant as I sat across from Ryan Taylor, my first date since everything had changed. The city sparkled below us, a carpet of diamonds spread beneath the iconic restaurant's panoramic views. My wine glass caught the soft lighting, creating tiny prisms on the crisp white tablecloth. "So, Grace tells me you're an architect," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the nervous flutter in my stomach. It had been Sophie's idea to accept Grace's offer to set me up, insisting it was time to get back out there. Ryan smiled, his warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "I am. Currently working on the new public library project downtown. But Grace tells me you're quite the powerhouse yourself." I took a sip of wine, buying myself a moment. Dating felt like speaking a foreign language I'd forgotten, familiar yet strange. "I wouldn't say powerhouse," I deflected. "I just love what I do." "That's not what I heard," he countered gently. "Word travels fast in Seattle business circles." "The Tech Vision partnership? That was impressive work." The mention of the partnership made my hand tighten slightly around my wine glass. I hadn't told Ryan about my connection to Jack. It wasn't exactly first date material. Instead, I steered the conversation toward his work, listening as he described his vision for making public spaces more accessible and community-oriented. Ryan's passion for his work was contagious, his eyes lighting up as he described the reading nooks and community spaces he'd designed into the library plans. For the first time in ages, I found myself genuinely engaged in conversation that had nothing to do with my past or my divorce. "The whole top floor will be a garden space," he explained, sketching quickly on his napkin. "A place where people can read surrounded by nature, even in the middle of the city." "That sounds amazing," I said, meaning it. "It's like bringing a piece of Kerry Park indoors." His face brightened. "Exactly. You know, not many people get that right away. Most just see it as an unnecessary expense." The waiter appeared with our entrees, seared scallops for me, duck for Ryan. The conversation flowed easily as we ate, touching on our shared love of hiking, our favorite Seattle coffee shops, and our opinions on the city's rapidly changing skyline. "I have to ask," Ryan said as we finished our meals. "Why did Grace think we'd hit it off? She's usually quite strategic about these things." I laughed, relaxing for the first time that evening. Knowing Grace, she probably has a 10-point plan for why we're perfect for each other. She's nothing if not thorough. "Well, she certainly got something right," he replied, his gaze holding mine for a moment longer than necessary. The evening air was crisp as we left the restaurant, the Space Needle glowing against the night sky. Ryan had parked in the same garage as me, and as we walked, our shoulders occasionally brushed, sending tiny sparks through my body. "I had a really nice time," I said as we reached my car, surprised to find I meant it. "Me too," Ryan replied. "Would you like to do this again? Maybe something less formal? There's this great little art gallery in Pioneer Square having an opening next weekend." I hesitated for a fraction of a second, old fears trying to surface, but Grace's voice echoed in my head. "You can't let one person's betrayal keep you from living, Emily." "I'd like that," I said, pulling out my phone to exchange numbers. As I drove home through the quiet streets of Queen Anne, I felt lighter somehow. The evening had been Nice. Normal. No drama, no baggage, just two people getting to know each other. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but not unwelcoming. I'd finally managed to make it feel like my space, not a memorial to my failed marriage. The porch. Light illuminated the new house numbers I'd installed, my small act of reclaiming the space. Inside, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a small glass of wine, carrying it out to my back deck. The Seattle night was unusually clear, a few stars visible despite the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Well, how was it?" I smiled, typing back. "Actually, really good. Art gallery next weekend." Her response was immediate. "Yes, Operation Emily's comeback is officially in phase 2. I laughed, but my amusement was interrupted by another notification, an email from Jack's lawyer about finalizing some paperwork. The contrast between the warm glow of my evening with Ryan and the cold reality of my divorce proceedings was jarring. Setting my phone aside, I leaned back in my deck chair, letting the cool night air wash over me. Dating again felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Ryan was nothing like Jack. He listened when I spoke about my work, showed genuine interest in my thoughts, and didn't try to minimize my achievements. The next morning, I woke to gray Seattle drizzle and a text from Ryan. "Thanks for a great evening. Looking forward to the gallery next weekend." At work, I couldn't help but notice that everything felt a bit lighter. Maria picked up on my mood immediately, raising an eyebrow as I hummed while reviewing client proposals. "Good date?" she asked, setting down my morning coffee. "Is it that obvious?" "Emily, you're practically glowing. It's nice to see." The day passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. During lunch, I found myself looking up the gallery Ryan had mentioned, reading about the artist whose work would be featured. It felt good to be interested in something new, something that had nothing to do with my past. That evening, I met Grace for our weekly dinner at her favorite French bistro. She listened intently as I told her about the date, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "I had a feeling you two would click," she said, looking pleased with herself. "Ryan has the same drive you do, but he also knows how to balance work and life, something I think you're ready to learn." I toyed with my fork, considering her words. "It's scary, Grace. Opening up again, trusting someone new." "Of course it is," she replied, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "But being scared doesn't mean you're not ready. It just means you're wise enough to understand the risk." Later that week, as I prepared for a major client presentation, I found myself thinking about Ryan's approach to his work, how he balanced creativity with practicality, vision with reality. It inspired me to revise my presentation, making it more accessible without losing its impact. The gallery opening arrived on a surprisingly sunny Saturday evening. I chose a simple black dress that made me feel confident, pairing it with the turquoise necklace Sophie had given me for my birthday. As I applied my makeup, I realized I was actually excited, not just nervous. Ryan was waiting outside the gallery when I arrived, looking handsome in dark jeans and a blazer. His face lit up when he saw me, and something warm unfurled in my chest. "You look beautiful," he said, offering me his arm. "Ready to see some art?" The gallery was crowded but not overwhelming, the white walls showcasing striking abstract paintings in bold colors. Ryan knew the artist, introducing me to him and several other people in Seattle's art scene. I found myself engaged in fascinating conversations about creativity, urban development, and the city's cultural future. "What do you think of this one?" Ryan asked, gesturing to a large canvas dominated by swirling blues and greens. I studied it, tilting my head. "It reminds me of looking down at the city from Cary Park during a rainstorm. All those lights and colors bleeding together." He looked at me with surprise and delight. "That's exactly what the artist said inspired it. You have a good eye." After the gallery, we walked to a nearby wine bar, finding a cozy corner table. The conversation flowed easily, touching on our families, our dreams for the future, our favorite places in the city. You know, Ryan said, swirling his wine thoughtfully, when Grace first suggested setting us up, I was hesitant. She mentioned you were recently divorced, and I worried it might be too soon. I appreciated his honesty. What changed your mind? She told me about your strength, how you'd handled everything with grace and professionalism, but mostly it was meeting you. You're not bitter or broken. You're someone who took a difficult situation and used it to grow. His words touched something deep inside me. For so long, I'd worried that my divorce would define me, that potential partners would see me as damaged goods. But Ryan saw me as I was now, stronger, wiser, more authentic. The evening ended with a kiss, soft, sweet, and full of promise. As I drove home, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't about replacing what I'd lost or proving anything to anyone. It was about moving forward, about being open to new connections and experiences. At home, I kicked off my heels and made a cup of tea, carrying it out to my deck. The night was clear again, the city lights twinkling below. My phone buzzed with texts from both Sophie and Grace, eager for updates, but I wasn't ready to share this evening just yet. I wanted to sit with these feelings, to understand what they meant for me. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and I remembered how I used to make wishes on stars as a child. But tonight, I didn't feel the need to wish for anything. For the first time in a long time, I felt content with where I was, excited about where I might be going. The woman who had woken up alone on Christmas morning seemed like a different person now, someone I had been rather than someone I was. The pain of that betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for something better, something truer to who I really was. I took a deep breath of the cool night air, letting it fill my lungs with possibility. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring, but tonight, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. The future stretched out before me like the city lights below, bright, complex, and full of potential. Above, me. The stars continued their ancient dance across the Seattle sky, witnesses to countless stories of endings and beginnings. Mine was just one among many, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees at Cary Park as I sat on my favorite bench, watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in shades of gold. My laptop balanced on my knees as I reviewed the final draft of my resignation letter. After 3 years of building my career at the firm, I was taking a leap into the unknown. The decision hadn't come easily. The Tech Vision partnership had been more successful than anyone anticipated, leading to a series of promotions and accolades. But something was missing. Each achievement felt hollow, somehow tainted by the constant reminders of my past with Jack. A text message lit up my phone, Ryan checking if we were still on for dinner. A smile tugged at my lips as I typed back a quick confirmation. In the months since our first date, he'd become an unexpected source of strength, encouraging me to trust my instincts about this new direction. Grace had been surprisingly supportive when I'd shared my plans to start my own consulting firm. Sometimes, she'd said, the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Her words echoed in my mind as I made the final edits to my letter. A familiar voice broke through my thoughts. Mind if I join you? I looked up to find Linda Marshall, Tech Vision's CFO, standing before me. Her presence in my favorite thinking spot was unexpected, but not entirely surprising. She'd become something of a mentor since the partnership began. Of course, I gestured to the empty space beside me. Linda sat down, her usual corporate attire replaced by casual weekend wear. She gazed out at the skyline for a moment before speaking. I heard rumors about your resignation, she said quietly. I wanted to talk to you before you made it official. She turned to face me, her expression serious. "We're preparing to offer you a position at TechVision, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. Full autonomy, better benefits, and twice your current salary." The offer hung in the air between us. A year ago, it would have been everything I wanted. Now it felt like golden handcuffs. "I appreciate the offer, Linda, but I've made up my mind. It's time for me to build something of my own." She nodded, as if expecting this response. "I thought you might say that. That's why I have a different proposition for you." She pulled out a business card, holding it between her fingers. "What if you could have both?" I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. "Your own consulting firm, but with TechVision. As your first major client. Complete independence, but with the security of a guaranteed contract. We'd be investing in your vision, not trying to contain it." The proposition was compelling. As I considered it, my phone buzzed again. Sophie, reminding me about tomorrow's yoga class. The contrast between my old life and the new one I was building struck me suddenly. "Let me think about it," I said finally. Linda smiled, handing me the card. "Take your time." "But Emily..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Don't let your past with Jack influence this decision. This is about your future, not his." After Linda left, I remained on the bench, watching as the city lights began to twinkle on. The Space Needle stood illuminated against the darkening sky, a beacon of possibility. My phone buzzed once more, a reminder about my dinner reservation with Ryan at Altura. The restaurant was busy when I arrived, its warm interior a welcome. Contrast to the autumn chill. Ryan was already at our table, sketching something on a napkin. He looked up as I approached, his face breaking into that smile that still made my heart skip. "You look deep in thought," he said as I sat down, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Everything okay?" I told him about Linda's visit and her unexpected offer. Ryan listened thoughtfully, asking questions that helped me clarify my own thoughts. It was one of the things I'd come to appreciate most about him, his ability to help me see situations from new angles without trying to influence my decision. "What does your gut tell you?" he asked finally, as our appetizers arrived. I twirled my wine glass, watching the liquid catch the light. That I need to do this on my own terms. But maybe I don't have to do it completely alone. The conversation shifted to Ryan's latest project, a sustainable housing development that was pushing the boundaries of green architecture. His enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself drawn into a discussion about community spaces and environmental impact. As we shared a dessert, Ryan suddenly grew serious. "I've been thinking," he said, reaching for something in his jacket pocket. "My lease is up next month, and I know we've talked about taking things slow, but..." He placed a key on the table between us. "Would you consider being my roommate?" The question caught me off guard. We'd been dating for months, but I'd been careful to maintain my independence, my space. The key gleamed under the restaurant's soft lighting, a symbol of trust and possibility. "You don't have to answer now," Ryan added quickly. "I just want you to know that I'm all in, whatever you decide about your career or anything else." Later that night, as I drove home through the quiet streets of Queen Anne, my mind was full of possibilities. The key Ryan had given me sat in my purse, a tangible reminder that life moved forward, that new chapters began even as old ones ended. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but not lonely. I'd learned to appreciate the solitude, to see it as an opportunity for reflection rather than a reminder of loss. Inside, I kicked off my heels and made my way to my home office. The space had evolved over time, becoming a reflection of my growing confidence. Vision boards and project plans covered one wall, while another displayed the photography I'd started exploring as a creative outlet. My grandmother's antique desk, rescued from storage after the divorce, held pride of place beneath the window. I opened my laptop, pulling up the draft of my business plan. Linda's offer added a new dimension to consider. Having Tech Vision as a guaranteed first client would provide stability while I built my client base. But could I maintain true independence with such close ties to my past? A text from Grace appeared. "Breakfast tomorrow? We should discuss your next moves." I smiled, grateful for her continued mentorship. Another message followed from Sophie. "Don't forget, yoga at 9. No excuses, even if you're hunting for office space." I walked out onto my deck, breathing in the crisp night air. The city spread out below, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Somewhere out there was the perfect office space for my new venture. Somewhere out there was the next chapter of my story. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The final divorce papers had been filed. The timing felt symbolic somehow. As one door closed definitively, others were opening. Ryan's key seemed to burn in my purse, a reminder that trust was still possible, that love could be different this time. I thought about Linda's words at Cary Park, about not letting my past with Jack influence my future. She was right, but not in the way she meant. My experiences had shaped me, but they didn't define me. Each decision I'd made since that Christmas morning had been a step toward reclaiming my identity, toward building something authentic and true. Moving in with Ryan would be another such step, not an escape or a replacement for what I'd lost, but a conscious choice to embrace new possibilities. Starting my own firm would be the same, not a reaction to Jack's presence at Tech Vision, but an expression of my own ambitions and capabilities. Inside, I opened my laptop one more time, making a final edit to my resignation letter. The words flowed easily now, confident and clear. This wasn't an ending but a beginning, of my company, of my relationship with Ryan, of the next phase of my life. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the one who had once sought validation in others' approval. She was stronger, wiser, more certain of her own worth. I placed Ryan's key on my nightstand, a promise of possibilities to consider in the morning. Above the city, stars twinkled faintly through breaks in the clouds, witnesses to countless stories, of endings and beginnings. Mine was just one among many, but it was uniquely mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly excited about writing the next chapters. The autumn wind whispered through the trees outside my window, carrying with it the scent of change. Tomorrow would bring decisions and challenges, but tonight, in this moment of quiet reflection, I felt at peace with the path ahead. The future was unwritten, full of possibility, and finally, completely my own to shape. The Pioneer Square loft space soared above me, sunlight streaming through industrial windows onto exposed brick walls. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors as I walked the perimeter, envisioning where desks would go, where client meetings would be held. This would be the home of Cooper Consulting, my own firm, my own vision. A gentle squeeze of my hand brought me back to the present. Ryan stood beside me, his architect's eye already mapping out the possibilities. "The natural light is incredible," he mused. "And these bones. You don't find character like this in modern buildings." The real estate agent, Patricia, hovered near the entrance, letting us explore. She'd shown us 5 other spaces today, but this one felt different. It felt like potential made tangible. "The previous tenant was an architectural firm," Patricia offered. "They left the custom built-ins, which would be perfect for your needs. And the location. You're right in the heart of Seattle's business district." I moved toward the wall of windows, taking in the view of the city I'd come to love. Street. Level bustle filtered up, the hum of traffic, snippets of conversation, the distant whistle of a ferry on Puget Sound. "This corner would make an amazing breakout space," Ryan said, sketching quickly in his notebook. "Some comfortable seating, maybe a coffee bar for clients." My phone buzzed. A message from Grace. Found your perfect space yet? Before I could respond, another text came through. This one from Linda at TechVision, confirming our meeting about the consulting contract tomorrow. What do you think? Patricia asked, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space. There's been quite a bit of interest, but I wanted to show it to you first. I walked to the exposed brick wall, running my hand along the rough surface. The space felt alive with possibility. Nothing like the sterile corporate offices I'd left behind. How soon could we start renovations? Patricia's face lit up. The building permits are already in place from the previous tenant. You could begin as early as next week. Ryan appeared at my side, his expression curious. So, is this the one? I took another look around the space. At the morning light, painting patterns on the floor, at the architectural details that spoke of Seattle's history, at the corner where I could already envision my desk. Yes, I said firmly. This is it. The next few hours were a whirlwind of paperwork and planning. Ryan stayed, offering insights about the space's potential and suggesting contractors he trusted. By the time we left, I had signed a lease and scheduled meetings with an interior designer. Celebrate at Canlis? Ryan suggested as we stepped out into the afternoon sunshine. We should mark this moment. But my phone buzzed again. Sophie this time. Emergency girl talk needed. Wine. And takeout at my place? I showed Ryan the message. He smiled, understanding as always. Rain check on Canlis. This feels more like a best friend kind of night. Sophie's apartment in Capitol Hill was a cozy haven of plants and texture, string lights twinkling year-round. She opened the door, before I could knock, wearing yoga pants and holding 2 wine glasses. Spill everything, she demanded, pulling me inside. I want to hear about every single space you saw. Over pad thai and Pinot Noir, I described the Pioneer Square loft, watching Sophie's eyes widen at each detail. It's perfect, Liv, she said, using her nickname for me. Absolutely perfect. It's also terrifying, I admitted, setting down my wine glass. What if I'm making a huge mistake, walking away from a secure career, taking on this much risk? Sophie's expression turned serious. Remember what you told me about that Christmas morning? How you thought your world was ending, but it was really just beginning? This feels like another beginning to me. I let her words sink in, remembering the woman I'd been then. Broken but not defeated. Scared but determined. You're right, I said finally. This isn't about running away from anything. It's about running toward something better. Speaking of running toward better things, Sophie wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. How are things with Ryan? Have you given any more thought to the key situation? I told her about Ryan's help with the office space, how naturally he fit into this new chapter of my life. It feels different this time, I explained. There's no pressure, no need to prove anything. It just works. Because you're different, Sophie pointed out. You know who you are now. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone to complement you. Later that night, I drove home through a light drizzle, Seattle's lights, blurred and beautiful through the rain-streaked windshield. My house was dark, but a package waited on the porch, samples from the interior designer Grace had recommended. Inside, I spread the samples across my dining room table. Fabric swatches, paint chips, flooring options. Each choice would help shape the identity of Cooper Consulting. This wasn't just about creating an office. It was about creating a space that reflected my vision for the future. My phone lit up with a text from Ryan. Just sketch some ideas for your space. Can't wait to show you tomorrow. Sweet dreams, brave girl. The nickname made me smile. Ryan had started using it after I'd told him about that Christmas morning, about how I'd rebuilt my life from the ashes of betrayal. He saw my strength as something to celebrate, not something to compete with. I walked out to my deck, needing a moment with the night sky. The rain had stopped, leaving everything fresh and clean. Somewhere out there, Jack was probably in his own home, living his own life. The thought didn't hurt anymore. It was simply a fact, like the weather or the phase of the moon. Tomorrow would bring meetings and decisions. Linda and the Tech Vision contract. The interior designer and renovation plans. Each choice would shape the path ahead. But tonight, standing under the Seattle stars, I felt ready for all of it. My phone buzzed one last time, Grace checking in. Remember, every great journey starts with a single step. You've already taken the hardest one. She was right. That first step had been on a cold Christmas morning, walking away from a life that no longer fit. Each step since then had brought me closer to this moment, standing on the threshold of something new, something entirely my own. I thought about the Pioneer Square loft, about how the morning light had seemed to bless every corner. By this time next month, it would be transformed into the headquarters of Cooper Consulting. My team would fill those spaces, bringing their own energy and ideas. Clients would gather in the meeting rooms, drawn by our reputation for innovation and integrity. Inside, I opened my laptop to review the business plan one last time. The numbers were solid, the projections realistic but ambitious. Linda's offer of Tech Vision as a primary client would provide the stability I needed while building my client base. But more importantly, it represented a full-circle moment, taking something that could have broken me and turning it into a foundation for growth. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me stood straight and tall, unafraid of the challenges ahead. She had learned that endings were just beginnings in disguise, that strength came from facing fears rather than avoiding them. Ryan's key sat on my nightstand, no longer a source of anxiety, but a symbol of possibility. Tomorrow, I would tell him yes, not because I needed someone, but because I chose to share my life with him. The Seattle night wrapped around my house, like a comfortable blanket, full of the promise of tomorrow. In the morning, I would begin the work of building something new. But for now, in this quiet moment, I savored the feeling of being exactly where I was meant to be. Life had a way of surprising you, of taking sharp turns when you least expected it. That Christmas morning had seemed like an ending, but it had really been the first page of a new chapter. Now I was writing my own story, choosing my own adventures, creating my own happiness. The autumn wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of possibility. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and triumphs, but tonight, in this moment of quiet reflection, I felt at peace with the path ahead. The future was unwritten, full of potential, and finally, completely my own to shape. The morning rush at Pike Place Market hummed around me as I threaded my way through the crowds, fresh flowers from my favorite vendor cradled in my arms. These dahlias would be perfect for my new office, their bold colors a statement of confidence and new beginnings. A light drizzle had started, typical Seattle weather that somehow made everything feel more vibrant. My phone buzzed, a message. From Catherine Sullivan, my attorney. Good news about the trademark filing. Call when you can. Another piece falling into place for Cooper Consulting. The name would be officially mine, protected and ready to represent everything I'd worked so hard to build. The scent of fresh coffee drew me into a small cafe tucked away from the market's main thoroughfare. As I waited in line, I spotted a familiar figure at one of the window tables, Diane Wilson, Jack's mother. She hadn't noticed me yet, absorbed in what appeared to be an intense conversation with someone I couldn't quite see. My heart rate quickened as I debated whether to slip out unnoticed, but then Diane looked up, her eyes meeting mine. The person she was speaking with turned around. It was Rachel, Jack's once intended replacement for me. Both women froze, their expressions a mix of surprise and discomfort. Before I could decide how to react, Rachel stood up abruptly, gathering her things. I should go. I heard her say to Diane. She hurried past me, avoiding eye contact, but I caught a glimpse of tears in her eyes. Diane remained seated, her posture rigid, her gaze fixed on me with an unreadable expression. Something made me walk over to her table. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe it was the realization that I no longer felt any fear or intimidation in her presence. "Hello, Diane," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Emily," she replied, her tone clipped. Up close, I could see that she looked tired, older somehow. "I suppose you're enjoying all this." "All what?" I asked, though I had a feeling. I knew what she meant. The scandal at Tech Vision, Jack's resignation, the whispers in our social circle. She took a sip of her coffee, her hand trembling slightly. "I assume you've heard?" I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, placing my flowers on the table. "Actually, I haven't. I've been focused on my own business." Diane's eyes narrowed, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she seemed to deflate slightly. "Jack's been asked to step down. The board found irregularities in his dealings. And Rachel?" She glanced toward the door where Rachel had disappeared. "Well, it seems she's not as compliant as we thought." I felt no satisfaction in this news, only a strange sense of peace. "I'm sorry things didn't work out the way you planned, Diane." She looked at me sharply. "Are you? After what we did to you?" "What happened that Christmas was cruel," I acknowledged, "but it led me to where I'm supposed to be. I've built something of my own, something real." The barista appeared with my coffee. I hadn't even realized they'd called my name. As I reached for it, Diane spoke again, her voice softer. "You know, I never really saw you until now. I was so convinced you weren't good enough for Jack, for our family. But maybe..." She paused, looking down at her hands. "Maybe we weren't good enough for you." The admission hung in the air between us, unexpected and heavy with meaning. Outside, the drizzle had turned to proper rain, drumming against the cafe windows. Market vendors hurried to cover their displays, creating a flurry of activity on the street. "I should go," I said, standing up. "I have a meeting with my interior designer." Diane nodded, then reached out suddenly, touching my arm. "Emily, I'm sorry for everything." I looked at her, this woman who had once wielded such power over my happiness. Now she seemed small, diminished by her own choices. "Thank you," I said simply. "I hope you find peace, Diane." Stepping out into the rain, I felt lighter somehow, as if the last lingering shadows of that Christmas morning had finally lifted. My phone buzzed again, Ryan this time with a picture of paint samples for my office. "Still think the blue is perfect for your accent wall. Trust your instincts." The walk to Pioneer Square gave me time to process the encounter with Diane. The market crowds thinned as I moved into the business district, replaced by hurrying professionals with umbrellas and briefcases. My own umbrella remained unopened. Sometimes it felt good to let the rain wash everything clean. Sarah, my interior designer, was waiting at the loft when I arrived. She'd already set up her laptop and samples on a folding table in what would soon be my private office. "Those flowers are exactly the energy we're going for," she said as I set them down. Bold, beautiful, unapologetic. We spent the next hour finalizing colors and materials, each choice a declaration of intent. The exposed brick walls would remain, their weathered surface a reminder of the building's history. Modern furnishings would provide contrast, while strategic lighting would transform the space as day turned to evening. "The contractors can start next week," Sarah said, making notes on her tablet. "We're looking at about 3 weeks for the full renovation. Think you can wait that long?" I smiled, looking around at the empty space that already felt full of possibility. I've waited longer for less important things. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Lunch? I need details." "About the blue paint drama. Then another from Grace. Don't forget our dinner tonight. Big news to discuss. Standing at the windows, I watched the city move below. Somewhere out there, Diane was probably still sitting in that cafe, confronting the consequences of her choices. Rachel was somewhere too, perhaps finally breaking free of expectations that were never truly hers. But here, in this space that would soon bear my name, I was exactly where I needed to be. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening in the emerging sunlight. Each window seemed to frame a different view of Seattle, the historic architecture of Pioneer Square, the modern skyline beyond, the distant waters of Puget Sound. Sarah's voice brought me back to the present. One last thing to decide. What do you want on the door? Just Cooper Consulting or something more? I turned from the window, my decision already made. Just Cooper Consulting. Simple, strong, direct, like everything else we're creating. Here. As Sarah packed up her samples, my phone lit up with an email from Linda at TechVision. The subject line read, "Board meeting results, urgent." I opened it, expecting news about our consulting contract. Instead, I found something entirely unexpected. Emily, the board has voted unanimously to offer you a seat as an independent director. Your experience, integrity, and vision are exactly what we need during this transition. Please call me to discuss. I sat down on one of the paint-spattered drop cloths, letting the magnitude of the offer sink in. This wasn't just about consulting anymore. This was about helping to reshape a company from the inside out. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same company that had once been a source of pain could now become a platform for positive change. My phone buzzed again. Grace had somehow heard the news already. "Say yes," her message read. "Some doors open for a reason." Looking around the empty loft, I could suddenly see everything so clearly. Not just the physical space, but the future it represented. Cooper Consulting would be more than just my own firm. It could be a force for transformation, for doing things differently, for helping others find their own path to authenticity. The late afternoon light slanted through the windows, creating long shadows on the floor. In a few weeks, this space would be filled with life and purpose. But right now, in this quiet moment, it felt like a sanctuary. A place where dreams could take shape and new chapters could begin. I texted Ryan. "Had an interesting day. Can't wait to tell you about it over dinner." His response came quickly. "Proud of you, brave girl. See you at 7. As I gathered my things to leave, I took one last look around the loft. The flowers I'd bought sat in their temporary vase, bold and beautiful against the backdrop of possibilities. Outside, Seattle continued its eternal dance of rain and sunshine, of endings and beginnings, of stories still waiting to be told. Walking down the historic staircase, my footsteps echoing in the empty building, I felt a profound sense of rightness. That Christmas morning had seemed like the end of everything, but it had really been an invitation to begin again. On my own terms, with my own vision, in my own way. The city welcomed me into its evening rhythm, the streets alive with people heading home or out for the night. I joined their flow, no longer feeling lost or alone, but part of something larger, a tapestry of lives and stories, each one unique, each one valuable, each one still unfolding. The early morning fog rolled off Puget Sound, enveloping Pioneer. Square in a dreamlike haze. My heels clicked against the cobblestones as I approached the building that housed Cooper Consulting. Today wasn't just any day. It was our official opening, and nervous energy coursed through my veins. Sarah, my interior designer, had outdone herself. The loft space had been transformed into something that perfectly balanced professionalism with creativity. The morning light filtered through the industrial windows, casting warm patterns across the custom-built workstations and collaborative spaces. My phone buzzed. A message from Grace. "Ready for the big day? Remember, you've earned this." Another text followed immediately from Linda at TechVision. "Board meeting at 2 p.m. Don't forget your presentation on the new diversity initiative. I placed my briefcase on my desk, running my hand along its smooth surface. The office still smelled of fresh paint and new furniture, but it already felt like home. In an hour, my small but carefully chosen team would arrive for our first official day of business. Maria was the first to arrive, carrying a box of pastries from our favorite bakery. Her familiar presence helped calm my nerves. She'd taken a leap of faith, leaving her secure position to join my venture, and her confidence in me meant everything. "The place looks amazing," she said, setting up the coffee station we'd designed to rival any Seattle cafe. Hard to believe this was an empty shell just weeks ago. Before I could respond, the elevator dinged, announcing more arrivals. James, our lead strategist, stepped out with Hannah, our marketing director. Both had impressive resumes from top firms, but what had drawn me to them was their shared vision for doing business differently. "Welcome to Cooper Consulting," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "Ready to change the world?" The morning passed in a whirlwind of activity. Our first client meeting was scheduled for 10, a promising startup referred by Grace. I watched with pride as my team seamlessly presented our ideas, their enthusiasm infectious. The clients left with signed contracts and excited smiles. Between meetings, I caught up on emails and finalized my presentation for the Tech Vision Board meeting. The diversity initiative was close to my heart, a program designed to mentor women in leadership positions. The irony of presenting it to the same company that had once undervalued me wasn't lost on me. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. Ryan stood there, holding a small wrapped package. "Thought you could use a little opening day surprise," he said, stepping inside. I unwrapped it carefully to find a beautifully framed photograph. The view from Cary Park at sunrise, the city emerging from morning mist. "For your wall," he said, "to remind you of where you started and how far you've come." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched me deeply. Ryan had become such an integral part of my journey, supporting without smothering, believing in me, even when I doubted myself. The afternoon brought more client meetings, more contracts, more possibilities. My team worked together as if they'd known each other for years, each person's strengths complementing the others. At 1:30, I gathered my materials for the Tech Vision Board meeting. Maria appeared in my doorway with a fresh cup of coffee. "You've got this," she said simply, understanding the weight of the moment. The walk to Tech Vision's offices gave me time to collect my thoughts. The fog had lifted, revealing a brilliant autumn day. As I rode the elevator to the executive floor, I thought about how different this felt from my previous visits. No more anxiety, no more shadows of the past. Just pure professional purpose. Linda met me in the reception area, her smile warm and genuine. "The board is excited about your presentation," she said as we walked to the conference room, "especially after the success of our joint ventures." The boardroom looked exactly as I remembered it, but I was different. I set up my presentation with calm efficiency, greeting each board member with confidence. When the chairman called the meeting to order, I stood tall, ready to share my vision. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Today, I want to talk about the future, not just of Tech Vision, but of our entire industry. About creating spaces where everyone can thrive, where diversity isn't just a buzzword, but a fundamental strength." For the next hour, I outlined my proposal, watching as skeptical expressions turned to interest, then enthusiasm. The questions that followed were engaged, thoughtful, showing real commitment to change. After the meeting, Linda pulled me aside. "They're going to approve it," she said excitedly. "Full funding, complete autonomy. You've done it, Emily." Leaving the Tech Vision building, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The program would help other women avoid the obstacles I'd faced, find their voices sooner, claim their power with confidence. Back at Cooper Consulting, my team was wrapping up their first day. The energy in the office was electric, the kind that comes from people who believe in what they're doing. "Drinks at Cannon?" James suggested. We should celebrate our first official day. I smiled, watching them gather their things, already comfortable with each other, already forming the kind of bonds that would make our company strong. You go ahead, I said. I have a few things to finish up here. After they left, I walked through the quiet office, taking in every detail. The late afternoon sun painted everything in soft gold, making the space feel almost magical. I stopped at each desk, remembering why I'd chosen each person, imagining the amazing things we'd create together. My phone buzzed with messages. Congratulations from Grace, a reminder about dinner from Ryan, excited updates from Sophie about her yoga studio's expansion. Each message represented a thread in the tapestry of support that had helped me reach this moment. Standing at the windows, watching the city prepare for evening, I felt a profound sense of peace. The woman who had woken up alone that Christmas morning seemed like a distant memory. Someone I had been, not someone I was. I opened my laptop one last time, reviewing our first day's accomplishments. New clients, signed contracts, approved initiatives, tangible proof that dreams could become reality with enough courage and determination. The Seattle evening settled around the building, lights twinkling on in offices and apartments across the city. In the distance, ferries crossed the Sound, carrying people home. My phone buzzed again. Ryan, telling me he was waiting downstairs, with champagne and takeout from our favorite Thai place. Before leaving, I took one final look around the office that represented so much more than just a business. This was a testament to resilience, to the power of believing in yourself even when others don't. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments in life lead us exactly where we need to be. Locking up, I felt the weight of the day's significance. Cooper Consulting wasn't just my company. It was proof that endings can be beginnings, that strength often comes from our deepest wounds, that the best revenge is living well and lifting others as you rise. The elevator carried me down to where Ryan waited, his proud smile visible through the lobby windows. Outside, Seattle hummed with its usual evening energy, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, it felt like anything was possible. Walking into Ryan's embrace, I knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome, new mountains to climb, but I was ready for all of it, stronger for every battle I'd already won, grateful for every lesson learned along the way. The future stretched out before us, full of promise and possibility. And this time, I wasn't afraid. This time, I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do, surrounded by exactly the right people. The conference room at the Four Seasons buzzed with anticipation as Seattle's most influential business leaders gathered for the annual Women in Leadership Summit. I adjusted my name tag, Emily Cooper, keynote speaker, still hardly believing I'd been chosen to address this prestigious gathering. Grace caught my eye from across the room, giving me a subtle nod of encouragement. As the organizer of the event, she'd fought to have me as the keynote speaker, believing my story would resonate with the audience of aspiring female executives and entrepreneurs. Maria appeared at my elbow, tablet in hand. "The Tech Vision representatives just arrived," she whispered, "including Jack. Should I have them seated in the back?" I shook my head, straightening my blazer. "No need. Seat them wherever they're comfortable." The Emily of a year ago might have been rattled by Jack's presence, but today I felt only a calm sense of purpose. Linda Marshall joined us, elegant as always in her signature power suit. "Ready to inspire some future CEOs?" she asked, linking her arm through mine. "The mentorship program has been an incredible success. They'll want to hear all about it." The stage lights warmed my face as I took my position at the podium. Hundreds of faces looked back at me, eager and attentive. Somewhere in that crowd sat Jack, but I didn't search for him. This moment wasn't about the past. It was about shaping the future. Success, I began, my voice steady and clear, isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about building elevators for others to rise. The words flowed naturally, born from experience rather than rehearsal. I shared the story of our mentorship initiative at Tech Vision, how it had grown from an idea born of adversity into a program that had already helped dozens of women advance their careers. The audience leaned forward, many taking notes, others nodding in recognition of shared experiences. But today, I continued, I want to talk about something deeper than professional success. I want to talk about resilience, about finding strength in your darkest moments, about turning pain into purpose. A hush fell over the room as I described the journey of building Cooper Consulting, carefully omitting the personal details but emphasizing the lessons learned. In the front row, Grace beamed with pride, while Linda nodded encouragingly. The true measure of success isn't in proving others wrong, I said, nearing my conclusion. It's in proving yourself right. It's about creating spaces where others can thrive, where authenticity is valued over conformity, where leadership means lifting as you climb. The applause that followed was thunderous. As I stepped away from the podium, women began rising from their seats. The standing ovation washed over me like a wave, carrying with it the validation of shared experience and understanding. The rest of the summit passed in a blur of panel discussions and networking sessions. Young entrepreneurs sought me out, eager to share their stories and ask for advice. Each conversation reinforced what I already knew, that success meant nothing if it wasn't shared. During the afternoon break, I found a quiet moment in the hotel's rooftop garden. Seattle spread out below, the Space Needle piercing the clouds, Puget Sound glittering in the distance. My phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. Just saw the live stream. You were amazing. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Before I could reply, I heard footsteps behind me. Turning, I found Jack standing there looking uncertain. That was quite a speech, he said, maintaining a professional distance. Thank you, I replied simply, turning back to the view. I never understood, he continued, his voice quiet. What you were capable of, what you needed to become. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm sorry I stood in your way. I considered his words, feeling neither anger nor vindication. You didn't stand in my way, Jack. You showed me I needed to make my own path. The moment stretched between us, filled with unspoken acknowledgments. Finally, Jack nodded and turned to leave. Congratulations, Emily. You've built something remarkable. As his footsteps faded, I breathed in the crisp autumn air. Below, the city continued its eternal dance of commerce and creativity, of endings and beginnings. My phone buzzed again, Sophie this time, sending a string of proud emojis and demanding dinner details. The afternoon sessions resumed, but now there was a different energy in the room. Women who had been quiet earlier began speaking up, sharing their own stories of resilience and reinvention. I watched from the back, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Linda joined me, coffee in hand. You've started something powerful today, she observed. These women needed to hear that success doesn't have to look like what others expect. Grace appeared on my other side, her presence as reassuring as ever. Ready for the closing panel? They've been asking for you specifically. The final session focused on the future of women in leadership. Seated between Linda and Grace, I found myself speaking about Cooper Consulting's upcoming expansion. New offices, new programs, new opportunities to create change. As the summit wound down, women lingered, exchanging contact information and making plans to stay connected. I watched as networks formed and strengthened, knowing that each connection represented potential for growth and support. Maria approached, with my schedule for the following week: client meetings, interviews with potential new team members, planning sessions for the expansion. The life I'd built was full and purposeful, shaped by choice rather than circumstance. Ryan was waiting, in the hotel lobby, looking handsome in his architect's casual elegance. "Proud of you," he said simply, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Ready to celebrate?" The evening air was crisp as we walked to our favorite restaurant, the city lights twinkling around us like earthbound stars. Ryan's hand was warm in mine, his presence a constant reminder that love could be supportive rather than restrictive. Over dinner, we talked about the summit, about the women I'd met, about the possibilities that lay ahead. Ryan listened with genuine interest, offering insights and encouragement. This was what partnership should feel like, each person supporting the other's growth. My phone buzzed one last time, an email from the summit organizers. They wanted me to lead a workshop series, helping other women develop their leadership skills and find their authentic voices. Looking across the table at Ryan, seeing the pride and love in his eyes, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path hadn't been easy, but every step had led me here, to this moment, to this life, to this version of myself. The Seattle night wrapped around us like a comfort blanket, full of possibility and promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight was for celebrating how far I'd come and dreaming about how far I could still go. The city lights reflected in the restaurant windows, creating a kaleidoscope of color and movement. Somewhere out there, hundreds of women were returning home inspired, ready to write their own stories of resilience and success. This was what triumph looked like, not in proving others wrong, but in helping others find their way. Not in climbing alone, but in building bridges for others to cross. Not in forgetting the past, but in transforming it into wisdom to share. The headlines in the Seattle Business Journal caught my eye as I scrolled through my morning news feed. Cooper Consulting named Most Innovative Startup of the Year. My phone immediately lit up with congratulatory messages, first from Grace, then a flood from others in my network. The recognition felt surreal. Sitting in my Pioneer Square office, watching the morning fog roll in from Puget Sound, I took a moment to absorb it all. My team would be arriving soon for our weekly strategy meeting, but for now the quiet gave me space to reflect. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Sarah, our newest hire, stood in the doorway clutching a stack of portfolios. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. She says she's an old friend. Eleanor Wilson?" My breath caught. I hadn't seen Jack's mother since that chance encounter at Pike Place Market. "Send her in," I heard myself say, standing up to face whatever was coming. Eleanor looked different somehow, softer around the edges, less imperial. She held a small gift bag in her hands, fidgeting with the handles in an uncharacteristically nervous gesture. "Emily," Eleanor began, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "I saw the article. I wanted to congratulate you in person." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, studying her as she sat down. The gift bag crinkled in her lap. "That's very kind of you, Eleanor." "I brought you something," she said, holding out the bag. "I've been meaning to return it for a while now." Inside the bag, wrapped in tissue paper, was my grandmother's antique silver picture frame, the one that had disappeared during the chaos of that Christmas morning. I lifted it carefully, remembering how it had once held my wedding photo. "I found it when I was helping Jack move," Eleanor explained, watching my face. "I kept meaning to send it back, but..." She trailed off, looking around my office. "You've built something remarkable here." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Through the windows, I could see my team gathering, in the conference room preparing for our morning meeting. "Why are you really here, Eleanor?" I asked quietly. She smoothed her skirt, a gesture so familiar it almost made me smile. "The truth? I'm here to apologize. What we did to you that Christmas, what I did, it was cruel. I was so focused on protecting what I thought our family should be that I couldn't see what it actually was. I placed the frame on my desk, next to Ryan's photograph of Seattle at sunrise. A lot has changed since then. Yes, Eleanor agreed, her eyes moving from the frame to the awards on my wall, the family photos on my desk, new ones, happy ones. You've changed, you've grown. Meanwhile, our family. She paused, swallowing hard. Well, let's just say karma has a way of evening things out. A notification popped up on my computer screen, 5 minutes until the strategy meeting. Eleanor noticed and began to stand. I should go. You're busy, successful. I just needed you to know that I was wrong about you, about everything. As she reached the door, she turned back. The article mentioned your mentorship program, helping women rebuild their lives after setbacks. It's good work you're doing. I studied her face, seeing past the perfect makeup to the vulnerability beneath. We have sessions every Thursday evening, if you're ever interested. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe hope. She nodded once, then slipped out the door. Maria appeared almost immediately, tablet in hand. Everything okay? The team's ready when you are. I picked up my grandmother's frame, running my finger along its intricate silver work. Actually, everything's perfect. Let's talk about expanding the Thursday night program. The strategy meeting was energetic, full of ideas and possibilities. My team had grown to 15 now, each person chosen not just for their skills, but for their commitment to our mission of empowerment and change. The newspaper article has already generated interest, James reported, pulling up analytics on the main screen. Our inbox is flooded with potential clients and partnership offers. Hannah, our marketing director, leaned forward excitedly. And the mentorship program? Applications have doubled since the feature went live. I looked around the table at these people who had taken a chance on my vision, who had helped make Cooper Consulting more than just a business. Then let's make sure we're ready to meet the demand. I want to help every woman who reaches out to us. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. At lunch, I met Ryan at our favorite spot overlooking the water. He was excited about his own news. His sustainable housing project had received full funding. We should celebrate, he suggested, reaching for my hand across the table. Both are successes. Dinner at home? I'll cook. Home. The word still gave me a little thrill. We'd moved in together 2 months ago, blending our lives and styles into something that felt right. His architectural eye and my need for warmth had created spaces that felt both beautiful and welcoming. Back at the office, I had a video call with Linda about expanding the TechVision partnership. As we discussed details, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Confident, engaged, alive with purpose. Emily, Linda's voice brought me back to the moment. Are you still with me? Sorry, just thinking about how far we've come. Remember when you first proposed this partnership? She smiled through the screen. I remember thinking you were either very brave or very foolish. Turns out, you were just very right. The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Sophie, bearing her signature yellow roses and a bottle of champagne. My star friend, she declared, pulling me into a hug. I knew you had it in you all along. We didn't open the champagne, saving it instead for the team celebration I'd planned for Friday. But her presence was exactly what I needed. Sophie had been there from the beginning, believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. As the day wound down, I found myself drawn to the window, watching the city transition from day to night. The Space Needle began to light up, a beacon in the gathering dusk. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Dinner tomorrow? We need to discuss the governor's Women in Business initiative. I smiled, thinking about how my network had grown and evolved. These women, Grace, Linda, Sophie, and now maybe even Eleanor, formed a circle of support I never could have imagined that Christmas morning. The silver frame caught the last rays of sunlight, sending prisms dancing across my desk. I picked it up, considering what photo to put in it. Not a wedding photo this time, but maybe something else. Something that represented not what I had lost, but what I had found. My team began to pack up for the day, their voices and laughter floating through the office. James stopped by my door. "Some of us are grabbing drinks at Cannon. Want to join?" "Thanks, but I have plans," I replied, thinking of Ryan waiting at home, probably already starting dinner preparations. Rain check? After they left, I took one last look around my office, at the evidence of growth and change surrounding me. The newspaper article on my desk seemed to glow in the evening light. Not just recognition of success, but validation of a journey that had started with loss and led to something greater than I could have imagined. Gathering my things, I thought about Eleanor's visit, about the power of redemption and growth. The silver frame went into my bag. Tomorrow I would find the perfect photo for it, something that spoke of new beginnings and second chances. The Seattle night embraced me as I stepped out onto the street, its familiar energy wrapping around me like a welcome friend. Above, stars began to peek through breaks in the clouds, reminding me that even the darkest nights held promise. As I drove home to Ryan and our shared life, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Success was sweet, but it was the journey, the growth, the healing, the building of something meaningful that had made all the difference. The envelope on my desk bore the governor's official seal, its contents already known but still thrilling to see in print. The invitation to serve on the State Women's Economic Council represented everything I'd worked toward, a chance to shape policy, to create real change at a systemic level. My office at Cooper Consulting hummed with the usual morning energy, but today felt different. Through the glass walls, I could see my team gathered for their daily stand-up, their animated discussions punctuated by laughter and shared purpose. Maria appeared in my doorway, coffee in hand and a knowing smile on her face. "The governor's office called again. They want to confirm your acceptance speech for the inauguration ceremony." The ceremony. In just a few days, I would stand before state leaders, successful entrepreneurs, and aspiring businesswomen to accept this appointment. The thought both excited and humbled me. A notification popped up on my computer, a reminder about today's mentorship session. Eleanor had become a regular attendee, slowly finding her own voice among the women who gathered to share their stories of resilience and reinvention. Through my office windows, Seattle's skyline stretched toward a surprisingly clear winter sky. A text from Ryan lit up my phone. "Just heard the news about the council appointment. Celebration dinner tonight? I'm thinking that new place on Capitol Hill." Before I could reply, Grace swept into my office, radiating excitement. "I just came from the planning committee meeting. The council appointment is just the beginning. They're talking about expanding the initiative nationwide." I gestured for her to sit, taking in this new information. "Nationwide? That's a huge undertaking." "And you're perfectly positioned to lead it," Grace said, her tone brooking no argument. "Your story, your success with Cooper Consulting, the mentorship program, you've created a blueprint for change." The mentorship program had indeed grown beyond our initial vision. What started as weekly sessions in our conference room had expanded to multiple locations across Seattle, reaching women from all walks of life. A knock on my door interrupted our discussion. Sarah, now our program director, entered with a tablet full of statistics. "Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see these numbers. Last month's success rates are off the charts." I studied the data as Sarah explained. Employment rates, salary increases, new business launches. Each number represented a woman who had found her path, who had transformed her life. "Emily?" Maria's voice came through the intercom. "Your 2:00 is here early. And Linda from Tech Vision is on line 1 about the joint venture proposal." Grace stood, straightening her impeccable suit. "I'll let you get back to it. But think about what I said. This could be bigger than Seattle, bigger than all of us. As Grace left, I took a moment to absorb everything. The council appointment, the possibility of national expansion, the growing success of our programs. Each piece fitting together like a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. The afternoon. Mentorship session filled our largest conference room. Eleanor sat in her usual spot, taking notes as women shared their stories. She'd found her own way to contribute, offering insights from her years of experience in Seattle's social circles, helping others navigate the unwritten rules of business networking. The thing about power, she was saying to a young entrepreneur, is that it's not about having it, it's about sharing it. I wish I'd understood that sooner. I watched from the doorway as heads nodded in agreement. These sessions had become more than just professional development. They were about building a community, about women supporting women in ways I once thought impossible. My phone buzzed with another text from Ryan. Made the reservations. Also, that house we looked at in Queen Anne just came back on the market. Should I call the agent? The house, a beautiful craftsman with views of the Sound, had captured our imagination last month. It needed work, but Ryan's architectural vision and my growing confidence in building things from scratch made that seem more exciting than daunting. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. James presented the quarterly results. Cooper Consulting had exceeded all projections. Hannah unveiled plans for our new marketing campaign, focused on amplifying women's voices in the tech industry. As evening approached, I gathered my things, including the governor's invitation and a stack of program applications for review. The Seattle sunset painted the sky in dramatic purples and oranges, a fitting backdrop for a day filled with possibilities. Maria caught me at the elevator. Before you go, the National Women's Business magazine called. They want to do a cover story. Something about rising from the ashes, the new face of female leadership. I smiled, thinking about how far we'd all come. Tell them yes, but with one condition: we feature the mentorship program participants. Their stories deserve to be told too. The drive to the restaurant gave me time to reflect. The council appointment would mean new responsibilities, new challenges. But it would also mean new opportunities to create change, to help others find their strength. Ryan waited outside the restaurant, looking handsome in his architect's casual elegance. His face lit up when he saw me, still making my heart skip after all this time. Ready to celebrate, Council Member Cooper? Inside, over glasses of champagne, we talked about everything: the appointment, the house, our shared future. Ryan's own firm was thriving, his sustainable design principles, changing how Seattle thought about urban development. You know what this means? He said, reaching for my hand across the table. We're both building things that matter, just in different ways. My phone buzzed one last time. Sophie sending her usual mix of emojis and exclamation points about the council news. She'd opened her third yoga studio, her own dreams expanding alongside mine. Looking around the restaurant, I caught glimpses of Seattle's movers and shakers. Some I now called friends, others whose paths had crossed mine in unexpected ways. Each connection represented a thread in the tapestry of support that had helped me rebuild my life. So, Ryan said as dessert arrived, about that house. I squeezed his hand, already knowing my answer. We were ready for this next step, ready to build something new together. The house, like everything else in my life now, represented possibility rather than obligation. The Seattle night wrapped around us as we left the restaurant, the city alive with energy and promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: the council, acceptance speech to write, programs to expand, lives to help transform. But tonight was for celebrating how far we'd come and dreaming about how far we could still go. The woman who had once lost everything had found something greater. Not just success or love, but purpose. Above us, stars peeked through breaks. In the Seattle clouds, witnesses to countless stories of endings and beginnings. Mine was just one among many, but it had become something I never expected. A beacon of hope for others, proof that the darkest moments could lead to the brightest futures. The flash of cameras illuminated the ornate ballroom of the Four Seasons as I took my place at the podium. Below, Seattle's most influential leaders gathered for the Governor's Economic Innovation Awards. The room buzzed with anticipation, not just for my speech, but for the announcement that would follow. Innovation isn't just about technology or profit margins, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the space. It's about reimagining what's possible, about creating systems that serve everyone, not just a privileged few. From my vantage point, I could see familiar faces in the crowd. Grace sat at the front table, elegant as always. Linda represented Tech Vision, her proud smile encouraging. Even Eleanor had come, sitting quietly near the back, a different woman from the one who had once judged me so harshly. The speech I'd prepared felt suddenly inadequate. Setting aside my notes, I spoke from the heart about transformation, not just of businesses or careers, but of perspectives and possibilities. The room grew still, attention focused on words born from experience rather than preparation. We stand at a crossroads, I continued, making eye contact with the young entrepreneurs scattered throughout the audience. We can maintain the status quo, or we can build something revolutionary. A business landscape where success is measured not just in profits, but in lives changed and barriers broken. The announcement that followed sent ripples through the room, the formation of the West Coast Women's Business Alliance, with Seattle as its flagship center. Years of groundwork, months of negotiations, all culminating in this moment. As applause filled the ballroom, I caught Ryan's eye at our table. His smile held all the pride and understanding I needed. He knew what this meant, not just for me, but for the thousands of women this initiative would reach. This initiative, I explained as camera flashes continued, will unite businesses, mentorship programs, and educational institutions across 3 states. Together, we'll create pathways for women to not just enter the business world, but to reshape it. The details flowed: funding commitments, corporate partnerships, educational programs. Each element represented countless hours of work, not just by me, but by a network of dedicated women and allies who shared the vision. As I concluded, the governor stepped forward to present the Innovation Award. The crystal trophy caught the light, sending prisms dancing across the ballroom. But it was the inscription that caught my eye: for transforming personal triumph into collective empowerment. The reception that followed hummed with energy and possibility. Young entrepreneurs approached with questions and ideas. Seasoned executives offered support and resources. In a quiet corner, I spotted Eleanor deep in conversation with a group of women from our mentorship program, sharing insights and connections. Ryan appeared at my side, champagne flutes in hand. The governor's chief of staff wants to discuss expanding the initiative to the East Coast, he said, passing me a glass. Apparently, your speech made quite an impression. Before I could respond, Sophie burst through the crowd, practically vibrating with excitement. Have you seen the social media response? Women across the country are asking how they can get involved. We're trending nationwide. Maria materialized with her tablet, already organizing the flood of inquiries and opportunities. The New York Times wants an interview, and there's a TED Talk invitation waiting in your inbox. I took a moment to absorb it all, watching the room full of people energized by possibility. This was so much bigger than my personal journey now. It had become a movement, a catalyst for change. Grace joined our group, her eyes twinkling. I remember telling you once that every setback could become a setup for something greater. I don't think even I imagined this. The evening continued, a whirlwind of conversations and connections. Linda shared Tech Vision's plans to implement similar programs nationally. Eleanor introduced me to key social influencers who could amplify our message. Each interaction added another thread to the tapestry of transformation we were weaving. As the formal event wound down, a smaller group gathered in the hotel's rooftop garden. The Seattle skyline provided a glittering backdrop as we discussed next steps and future plans. The key, I found myself explaining to a young CEO, is understanding that true success isn't a zero-sum game. When we lift others as we climb, we all rise higher. Ryan's hand found mine as we listened to others share their visions and commitments. His architectural firm had pledged to create women-centric workspaces in each city where the Alliance would operate, spaces designed to foster collaboration and growth. My phone buzzed with messages from across the country, women inspired by the initiative, ready to bring it to their own communities. Each notification represented another opportunity to create change, to transform pain into purpose. James approached with updated statistics from our pilot programs. Employment rates, salary increases, new business launches. The numbers told a story of lives transformed, of barriers broken, of dreams realized. Sarah, now overseeing our national program development, joined us with exciting news. Universities are reaching out, wanting to integrate our curriculum into their business programs. We're changing how the next generation thinks about leadership. The night air carried the scent of possibility as conversations continued under the stars. Plans were made, partnerships formed, dreams expanded. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about creating a legacy of empowerment and change. Hannah presented preliminary marketing materials for the national rollout, powerful images and messages that captured the essence of our mission. We're not just telling success stories, she explained. We're showing women they can write their own. As the evening drew to a close, I found myself at the rooftop's edge, taking in the city that had witnessed my journey. Seattle sparkled below, each light representing countless stories of struggle and triumph, of endings and beginnings. Ryan appeared beside me, his presence as steady as always. "Proud of you, brave girl," he said softly, using the nickname that had come to mean so much. The future stretched out before us, full of challenges and opportunities. The Alliance would require dedication, innovation, and endless energy. But looking at the people gathered on that rooftop, allies and supporters, mentors and mentees, I knew we were ready. Tomorrow would bring meetings and decisions, strategies and plans. The real work was just beginning. But tonight, under the Seattle stars, we celebrated not just what we had achieved, but what we would build together. The raw woman who had once faced Christmas morning alone could never have imagined this moment. But then again, sometimes the best things in life come from the moments we think will break us, from the courage to begin again, from the strength to help others find their way. As guests began to leave, each carrying with them a piece of the vision we'd shared, I felt a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't the end of a journey, but rather the beginning of something greater, a movement that would ripple out across cities and states, changing lives and reshaping futures. The Seattle night wrapped around us like a promise, full of possibility and hope. Above, stars twinkled through breaks in the clouds, witnesses to countless stories of transformation. Mine had become more than just a personal triumph. It had become a catalyst for change, a beacon of hope for others just beginning their own journeys of discovery and empowerment. The winter sun streamed through the windows of my Queen Anne home as I finished wrapping the last Christmas present. A year had passed since that morning that changed everything, yet it felt like a lifetime ago. The house filled with the aroma of fresh-baked cookies and pine from the Christmas tree Ryan and I had decorated together. Sophie burst through the front door, arms laden with more presents and decorations. "The caterers are all set for tomorrow," she announced, dropping everything on the couch. And Grace just texted, she's bringing her famous mulled wine. Tomorrow would be different from any Christmas I'd celebrated before. Instead of seeking approval or trying to fit someone else's expectations, I was hosting a celebration of transformation and hope. The guest list included women from our mentorship program, colleagues who had become friends, and people who had supported my journey along the way. My phone chimed with a message from Eleanor. She was bringing a young entrepreneur she'd been mentoring, asking if there was room for one more. Of course there was. That was the whole point of this gathering, creating space for everyone to belong, to grow, to shine. Through the living room window, I watched as the first snowflakes began to fall, dusting Seattle in a gentle white blanket. Ryan's car pulled into the driveway, returning from his last-minute shopping run. This Christmas marked not just an ending, but a beginning, a celebration of how far we'd all come, and the promise of where we were going. The sound of Ryan's key in the lock brought me back to the present. He entered with a gust of cold air and snowflakes, carrying bags from Pike Place. "Market. Got everything for tomorrow," he announced, setting them down, including those special cheeses Grace loves. Maria arrived next, laptop in hand despite my insistence that this was a planning-free evening. "Just one last thing," she said, settling onto the couch. "The January program registration numbers. They're unprecedented. We might need to expand again." The living room gradually filled with familiar faces. Hannah brought prototype designs for our new community center. James arrived with his wife, both carrying dishes for tomorrow's feast. Each person who entered added their own warmth to the space, their own thread to the tapestry of connection we'd woven. "Remember last Christmas?" Sophie asked quietly as we arranged appetizers in the kitchen. "Look at you now. Look at all of this." I did remember. The pain, the shock, the feeling of my world shattering. But standing in this kitchen, surrounded by love and purpose, those memories had lost their power to hurt. They had become instead a testament to resilience, to the strength we find when we think we have nothing left. Linda arrived with news about the Alliance's latest expansion. 5 more cities confirmed for spring, she reported, accepting a glass of wine. "The momentum is incredible." Outside, the snow continued to fall, transforming Seattle into a winter wonderland. Through the window, I could see children playing. In the street, their laughter carrying on the crisp air. Everything felt possible, magical in a way I'd forgotten Christmas could be. Grace made her entrance, bringing not just her promised mulled wine, but also a surprise, official approval for our international pilot program. "Merry Christmas," she said with a knowing smile. "The world is ready for what we've built." As evening settled in, our home filled with conversation and laughter. Women from different walks of life shared stories and dreams, each one both teacher and student in our growing community of support. The Christmas tree lights twinkled, casting a warm glow over the scene. Ryan found me in a quiet moment, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I watched our guests. "Happy?" he asked simply. "More than happy," I replied, leaning into his embrace, grateful, complete. The doorbell rang again. Eleanor, arriving with not just one but 3 young entrepreneurs she'd convinced to join our celebration. The women entered hesitantly at first, but were quickly absorbed into the warm atmosphere of acceptance and possibility. Sophie organized an impromptu gift exchange, something small and meaningful from each person present. But the real gifts weren't the wrapped packages. They were the connections being made, the barriers being broken, the dreams being shared and supported. As night fell, the snow created a hushed backdrop to our gathering. Conversations flowed, between business and personal, professional, and intimate. Plans were made, ideas sparked, friendships deepened. This was what Christmas should be. Not a performance of perfection, but a genuine celebration of growth and community. Looking around, at these faces, some old friends, some new allies, all part of this remarkable journey, I felt a profound sense of rightness. The path hadn't been easy, but every step had led here, to this moment, to this understanding of what really mattered. Tomorrow would bring the larger celebration, more guests, more stories of transformation to share. But tonight, in this intimate gathering, I saw the truth of what we'd created, not just successful businesses or programs, but a movement of authentic connection and support. Ryan raised his glass, calling for attention. To new traditions, he proposed, and to the brave women who create them. The toast rippled through the room, glasses clinking, voices joining in celebration. Outside, Seattle glittered under its blanket of snow, the Space Needle piercing the night sky like an exclamation point to our joy. This was Christmas reimagined, not as a test to pass or an impression to make, but as a genuine expression of love, growth, and possibility. The woman who had once faced Christmas morning alone had found not just success or love, but purpose, community, and the joy of lifting others as she climbed. As the evening wound down, guests departing with warm hugs and promises for tomorrow, I stood at the window watching the falling snow. Ryan's reflection appeared beside mine in the glass, his presence as steady as always. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked. I smiled, thinking of all the women who would gather here, each with their own story of resilience and reinvention. "Ready for everything," I replied. The Seattle night wrapped us in its quiet embrace, snow continuing to fall like gentle promises. Above, stars peeked through breaks in the clouds, witnesses to countless stories of transformation. Mine had become more than just a personal triumph. It had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of beginning again, of turning pain into purpose, of creating light from darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to make a difference. But tonight, in this moment of quiet joy, I felt the truth of what we'd built. Not just a successful life, but a meaningful one, rich with purpose and possibility. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.